ULDIS ZARINS, welcome to the Undraped Artist Podcast.
Hey, how you doing?
It's good to have you. I'm doing great. So where are you right now and where are you from?
I'm originally from Latvia, and I'm currently in Latvia. So it's like a northern Eastern Europe. So I'm somewhere in between Estonia, Russia, Lithuania, and Sweden, somewhere there.
Okay. So you're kind of a unique guest for me. I've never had an author on the show. So you're the first author. But the reason I have you on the show is because your book is exceptional. I've purchased just about every anatomy book out there, and yours is always my go-to anatomy book. So for my guests, I'm going to pull this up a little bit early, and we're going to show you the anatomy book I'm talking about. It's Anatomy for Sculptors. But you also did Anatomy of Facial Expressions, and let's see, and then Form of the Head and Neck. Now, I don't have this one yet, but I'm going to be getting it from you as well. And then you also have another one coming out, something about the arms and hands. Is that correct?
Yes, it's Arms and Hands in Motion. That's we're going to launch the Kickstarter in November 1st.
Yeah, man. Okay. I got to tell you, the first thing I thought when you came up on the screen was, dude, you're young. What the heck, man? How in the world have you accomplished so much? You look like you're like 30 at the most, maybe in your late 20s. How have you accomplished so much in such a short time?
Well, I'm drinking these life elixir, you know. I'm looking young, but I'm not as young. I'm 47 at the moment.
You are not.
So, yeah, I do. I am 47.
Holy moly, you do look young. That's my age.
Yeah.
Jeez, man. What the heck?
So it's just like magic, you know.
Do you get that a lot, or is this just the screen? Just the camera?
No. I look younger. That's true.
Holy
it's
cow.
Not on the screen.
Okay, well at least that makes a little more sense, because the amount of knowledge that you've crammed into these books is unbelievable. And the illustrations, I mean, everything about them, they're just so intuitive for the reader. They're just exceptional. So I'm glad to hear you're at least 47, but even still, you've accomplished a lot even at that age to have all these books out and have them be so successful. So I want to know a little bit about your history. First of all, are you an artist? Are you a sculptor? Are you a painter? How did you get into the business of making books about anatomy?
Yeah, so originally I'm a sculptor. I'm like classically trained, like properly trained sculptor. So here in Eastern Europe, when I started my art studies, this classical art was still quite like strong. At the moment, it's kind of losing the place. So it's not anymore as strong as it was like 20 years ago. So I graduated like the art college, which was everything about like a really classical art. I mean, like a Greek and Roman art. So it's more about that. And then Art Academy, which was still kind of classical. So it's like a Fine Arts Academy of Latvia. And yes, I'm sculptor. And the whole thing basically started because I realized, and that was like early 2000s, I realized one thing, that there is not like one good book, like anatomy reference book, which is like specially dedicated for sculptors and in particular for artists, because at the moment we have plenty of them. So it's like there's like hundreds, maybe even thousands of different kind of very visual books. But believe me, like 20 years ago, it was like very hard to find some very good like illustrative like visual book for artists. It's like a paradox. Like you have plenty of books for artists, but they are barely visual. So it's mostly text. And I was like struck by that. So and I kind of like making my personal notes about the form and making my own sketches to explain myself. So basically, I just took those books and translated to my language, so to my kind of artist's language. And then was like a early age of Facebook, and it was the time when Facebook was still organic, and I was posting those pictures in Facebook, and then I get like fans, like a lot of people that was following me, and they said like, yeah, you're making good stuff. And I'm already in the story. So basically, then I kind of was looking at my notes and thinking, what should I do with them? So shall I publish the book and things like that? So then it was also early age of like a Kickstarter, and people from Facebook said me that don't worry about the money, we'll help you to publish the book. And then I was doing professionally art, and mostly I was doing sand sculpture and ice sculpture for living. And basically, what is the difference between the classical sculpture and let's say sand sculpture? The main difference is that you make like a huge sculptures, a lot of huge sculptures in very short time period. So basically, you need like weeks or even months to create stone sculpture or bronze sculpture. But with the sand sculptures, like you create like a multiple of those sculptures. Let's say you need like maybe 2-3 days for one big sculpture, and you kind of living those like art lives, those cycles very quickly. You're kind of maturing very quickly. So you're making those mistakes, you're failing, you're learning, and it all happens very quickly. And you kind of like in the beginning of the interview, asked me like how did I manage to do so many things in my life, and one of the answers is that I kind of mature quickly because of the sand sculpture. So you kind of, your art education doesn't end when you graduate from the academy. So basically, your art education in some sense it just begins. So you have to do a lot to learn a lot. So, and therefore I kind of suggest for the young artists to try sand sculpting or any
What the
kind of
heck is
those.
sand sculpt? I've never even heard of it. I'm imagining
Okay.
you on the beach making sand castles.
Well, not. No, it's just like a full-blown, like classical sculptures just from the sand. Well, yeah, like shame I cannot show you now, but
Well, we can
well,
pull up
if you
the
go,
internet. Do you have something on the internet?
yeah, if you go Facebook, maybe you find my profile, then you can see some of my works.
Okay, let's
There.
do that real quick. Let's do that.
There you go. There's one.
What the heck? Are you kidding me?
And see that car? Just like Anna, go forward.
Whoa.
Yeah.
You
Just go
got to be
ahead.
kidding me.
These kind of experiments. This is one of my favorite ones. They're just made of sand, and there is no glue, no concrete, nothing. It's just like sand sculpture.
What? How do you make a living doing this? I mean, who pays for this?
Well, just another story. So it's another. Let's just topic for another podcast.
Oh, no, you got to give me a little bit. I mean, this is real. I've never seen anything like it.
Like my Facebook is not like prepared for kind of these things. But
Yeah.
there's like plenty of stuff.
Cow. And these things happen, they'd have to happen relatively quickly because you got to deal with the weather.
Yeah. This is Portugal, and here like it might not rain for years, and then it rains like a hell. And there is like it's just like a long story about it, but there's a plenty of festivals and also plenty of all kinds of like events, competitions, and you can make living, and pretty decent living actually, out of the sand sculptor. But then you really have to become like a professional sculptor.
This is unbelievable. I have never seen anything like it.
Okay.
Wow. Yeah, I see what you mean though. You got to work fast. I mean, you can't just let these things sit for months and dilly-dally around.
And also, and then also ice sculpture, as you can see those.
Is there some of those too?
Yeah. But anyway, like
Oh yeah, right here.
That's the ice sculpture. And we have pretty harsh weather here.
Is that ice?
Yeah, that size.
Wow.
Well,
Okay. That I had no idea that's what you did. This is incredible.
yeah.
Yeah, unbelievable. Okay, so that's how you got I mean that's what you were doing, and then all of a sudden people started to get interested in the anatomy illustrations you were putting on Facebook.
Yeah, well, I kind of like did this sand sculpture and ice sculpture for like about 10 years or something.
Mm-hmm.
Just like I write straight from academy, I went to this sand and ice thing because, I had my children born during the studies in academy, and like I had to support my family and make my living. So I just like, traveling around the world, Asia, like USA, Latin America, everywhere, and did these sand sculptures like around the year. And then I kind of get tired of it. It's just like
Mm-hmm.
normal. When you do something like a lot, then you get tired, even though each time you do like the sculpture, each time you do something new, and it's kind of like a dream for the artist because you just always can do something new. Because when you start becoming professional in as you kind of have to repeat yourself, otherwise you are not professional.
Mm-hmm.
And by when you're repeating yourself, you're kind of like polishing your skills, and then you become even more professional, but you stop being creative then. And that's what happened to me. Even though I was making all kinds of figures, still I felt myself that I kind of losing this creative side of myself. And then I thought, like, how can I, you know, what can I do something that I'm interested in, but still in the same time not going too far away from the arts. And then, I always like anatomy, but not like in that level as I do now. And yeah, and then
Hmm.
then I pulled out my notes and start publish them. Because, I had those notes with me always. Because when you do your sculpture, you do some like short preparation, and I like the visual, so I kind of made my own drawing, my own explanations, and simplifying forms, and kind of things like that. And I was always appreciated if somebody did it for me, and I thought like, well, that's a good thing, when you just take something complex and then break into the simple elements, and then somebody else can use it. So that's what I really appreciate if somebody else did it. And my like favorite authors in anatomy is like Gottfried. Like Gottfried is totally
Mm-mm.
my. You don't know. Basically, Gottfried is a German anatomist. Actually, he died recently, 2007, and he was living and working in East Germany, and he was Dresden. Maybe it was Dresden Art Academy. I don't know. I really have to check out. And he was in some sort. He was like a Picasso of art academy of our art anatomy. And what I mean with Picasso, because Picasso, he was not like the guy who was really digging deep, like horizontally,
Mm-hmm.
but he was developing like vertically. So he was just find a new style and then just let somebody else to develop it, and he was establishing a lot of like new like ideas in art and art philosophy, but he was never like became professional in one of each of them. So cubist, assemblage, all kinds of these things. So he was just playing around,
Mm-hmm.
and same thing with Gottfried. So he was kind of like discovering these new philosophies and concepts about the form analysis, but then he was not developing them. So he made a little sketch and then move forward, made a little sketch and move forward. And then I was looking at those sketches and thinking, why don't you just take one of those sketches and just, go deeper? And that's what I did, basically. So he is absolutely my hero. The Gottfried is definitely my like one love.
Hmm. I'll have to look him up. So you said you knew about anatomy before, but you're illustrations show a depth of anatomy that is extraordinary. And one of the questions I have is, did you find that you had to learn as you went on some level in order to get such specific, such detailed information about anatomy? Or was all that information already there from past study?
Yeah, some was, because in classical art you have to study anatomy and pretty deep, but of course not in that level as I know now. It's more about like, if you want to understand the subject, write a book about it. So that's
Yeah.
basically, yeah. Because when you're writing a book, it's different form of expression than anything else. Because when you write a book, you have time, and then you have all the reasons to really study and analyze. And basically, if there is something in anatomy that is kind of not completely understandable for me, I'm writing a book about it. That's my mission in this world.
So the book, and I thought that might be the case because I started writing a book years ago. And this is one of the reasons I admire you so much, because it took me months to write one chapter. And mostly just because I just kept on proofreading and couldn't really get it to sound the way I wanted to sound, to look the way I wanted it to look. And I'm too much of a perfectionist. But I found also that I really had to make sure that everything I said, I could really back it up. And so I found myself researching and making sure that what I believed to be true was actually true. Like you said, I grew from writing the book. I learned more about the subject than probably anyone that will ever read this chapter, I never did finish it, could ever possibly learn because of that. It sounds like
Yeah,
that
that's
was
how
your
it works.
experience. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So it took not like, basically, like, from those three books, the quickest one was the first one, because I didn't have time to expand,
Mm-hmm.
because I had to finish it, and it took me a year, like every day for at least 10 hours, like work, nonstop work, sometimes 15, 16, 17 hours work a day. But I did it. So the second book took me 2 years, and the third book took me 2.5 years, like
Wow.
everyday work. And in the second and the third book, it was like a whole team working on it. So it's not only me. So I was making this kind of like a raw basics, and then I gave others to make it perfect. So it's like a teamwork, and it's not only the creation of content. There's like many details. So without the team, it's quite hard to succeed in this business. Basically, you can make one good book, but if it's illustrative, then you need somebody to help you with work. But
Yeah.
anyway, like 90% is your work, and yeah,
Hmm.
totally agree.
Yeah. I'm going to pull up your book right now, and I want to show people, and I'll skim through it quick because obviously this stuff is copyrighted and we don't want people to get everything for free, right? But
No worries, no
okay.
worries.
But one of the things that I love about this book is I'm not a reader, I'm a visual learner. And you kind of touched on this a little bit earlier when you said there was nothing out there that was visual for artists. The book that I used to read before, or used to refer to before yours, that was my previous favorite, was the Goldfinger book. But when I try and
Mm,
really dig deep into that book and read it, it was like, I mean, it was like reading a medical journal. I mean, it was
mhm.
so complex and academic, from, in a literary sense, not so much in an artistic sense, although the illustrations are beautiful as well. And so it was refreshing to see your book where it was completely visual with notes. It's exceptional and very refreshing because it's how I think many of us learn as artists, visually. One question I have for you is, you said you have a team, and I wonder, as you're doing this book, how do you break this down? It's so complex because you've got beautiful photography, then you've got illustration over photography, and then you've got what appears to be 3D modeling in some cases, and then just straight up
In the first
illustration.
book, in the first book, there was no 3D at all. So it was just like all like drawing skills. I didn't know how to sculpt 3D. Basically, that was like I'm like in the second book, because I was not sculpting in 3D, like digital sculpting.
Right.
And I did sketches, and then I found somebody that can help me with 3D. And during the creation of the second book, I learned some 3D, because I understood one thing: you cannot be dependent on somebody that you cannot be fully dependent on somebody with this important thing. And at the moment, I'm kind of like, I can do 90% sculpting myself, so it's no problem anymore. So I learned how to do digital sculpting. It was tough because I'm still some sort of like a boomer. I'm coming from that older, world with clay and brushes and papers and stones and wood and stuff like that. And it was kind of tough for me, but nothing you can do. You have to learn. So, yeah.
Have you found that your books are selling to painters as much as sculptors?
Oh, yeah.
Was that surprising
definitely.
to you?
No, it wasn't. Actually, in the beginning, I was thinking about the name. So I was kind of like targeting, of course, I primarily targeting like the sculptors, because I'm a sculptor. And if somebody else can benefit, well, yeah, have it, enjoy. So that was like my thing. I mean, like I was kind of giving like priority to the sculptors. So I thought that the sculptors were like the most kind of deprivated from like good visual content for the sculptors. And again, if you understand the form, then basically there is no problem for you to do the art. So I think like the stuff for the sculptors should help the painters and the other like artists.
Yeah, it absolutely does. I just finished a painting of the crucifixion, and I had your book sitting next to me the entire time. Because one of the things that I found was, I mean, I know anatomy more than the layperson, but probably not even a fraction of what you know. And I found there were all kinds of asymmetries, which we all know. Anyone who knows anything about or has ever really looked at a person knows that there are all kinds of weirdnesses and asymmetries in the models. And I kept referring back to your book to make sure that as I modified these asymmetries, that I was being true to anatomy, not just making up bumps and dents arbitrarily. So it was really, really helpful.
Yeah, just about like the asymmetries and irregularities. Those things actually make this organic and real life world beautiful. And that's what some of the beginning artists don't realize, that this like imperfections actually are even more important than like the precision of detailing. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree. And that was the fun thing about it as I was doing this last painting, because it was of Christ. So I was trying to balance humanity with perfection. So I left some asymmetries and fixed others. And it was just this kind of back and forth. I'd fix something, not fix, but I'd make something look more perfect, so to speak. And then I'd make it more human again and less perfect, and until I struck the right balance. But I agree with you 100% in that if you make everything too perfect, it almost stops looking human.
Well, we have this natural tendency to perfection everything. And you have to really use your energy, a lot of energy, to make it unperfect. Because as soon as you relax, you start making it perfect again. So it's kind of like it's a problem. Like, for instance, like a hairs or clothing. Like you just like, as soon as you relax, everything becomes parallel, perpendicular, and like right angles and flat, perfect surfaces and everything. And also with hairs, you start making parallel lines. So you should not rely on feeling. You should really learn or make some sort of like a technique how to avoid this, perfect tendency.
Hmm.
Um, like in classical painting, there's like a very good tricks how you can avoid these perfections. It's like underpainting. Have you heard about
Yeah.
painting?
Yep.
So it's basically you kind of create like a you create depth by just painting on already non-perfect surface. As you know, you just make a lot of stuff before you start even paint anything.
Hmm.
You kind of like the canvas is not white. You begin with already some lights and shadow parties and things like that. It's extremely interesting, like these discoveries what has been done in Renaissance about like the air perspective and color perspective and it's amazing. It's amazing knowledge, which is kind of we're losing it. Thing.
Yeah, we are. I think John Singer Sargent said this, so my audience have to forgive me if I got this wrong, but he said something to the effect that if you look hard enough, you don't need to know what's there. You don't need to know anatomy because you can just see it. And for a long time, I adopted that attitude. Well, I can see it. I put the model in front of me, paint it the way I see it. But then at some point, I realized that the problem is sometimes you don't want to have the model sitting there, or sometimes you want to change the model, or sometimes you want to work from imagination, and then you better know anatomy. And that's when I started really studying anatomy. That leads to my question, and that is, in your mind, clearly anatomy is important, but do you feel like it's absolutely crucial in painting and sculpture to know anatomy?
It's not crucial, definitely. There is like a opposite side, knowing too much of anatomy as well. I mean, like some people, when they start to understand things, they start overuse it, and
Mm-hmm.
then you need to really kind of control yourself to know not overuse, because anatomy is just like a tool. It's like a tool, like every other tool in art. And sometimes you want to express with anatomy, and sometimes you don't want to show anatomy. Like if you look at the medieval ink sculpture and drawing, so there's almost no anatomy because there is a different accents. There is like a different. You don't want to uh, force this, humanistic view. You just want to show something more, something beyond, and then maybe anatomy can be very distractive. So I think you have to, as I said, you have to be careful with anatomy. This knowledge can be harmful for you. And other thing about seeing anatomy, it's interesting when you look at the Michelangelo's bodies, he kind of see anatomy which is not present. That's a funny thing. It's kind of hard to explain, but when you know anatomy, you start to project it, and sometimes you get very interesting results. Kind of, I don't know. You kind of making even more realistic that it's actually is in real life by
Mm-hmm.
knowing and applying this knowledge. And I can only partially agree with this idea about like seeing anatomy and then represent it, because artist is not a documentalist. The time when artists was kind of copying the reality, it's over. And it's over when the photography and video came. The role and the mission of artists nowadays is to interpret reality, not to represent it. And
Mm.
that's what is in your head, and what you know is even more important than what you see, because camera can see better than you. You will never be able to compete with camera, but nobody is interested in about copying the reality. They're interested about your personal view, your personal, you know, emotions, what you kind of experience by looking at the reality.
Yeah, I love hearing that because that's an argument that modern artists make for moving away from reality. Saying, well, the camera can copy reality, so why bother copying reality? But you're using the exact same argument for learning more about nature and making it
Yeah.
better than what you can see or more real than what you can see, which is a complete opposite of what the modernists would say about quote unquote interpreting reality.
Well, it's interesting. We're living in some kind of like not even postmodern world. We're living in like a kind of beyond the postmodern. You know, the modern world was interesting. Like you always, when you think about like the art history, you always have to kind of look back into the context when this art was created, and in like as you know this modern art born in France, mostly we can talk about like the modern art schools in France, and you have to understand what actually happened in 1980s in France. It was just saloons, and everything was overflowed with these classical figures, and people just get tired of this kind of formal, very perfect, super perfect art. And then Rodin came, and then Picasso came, and they broke it, and they start talking some sort of like a gibberish. And people, they just kind of woke up and they said like, wow, that's it's a new taste. It's almost like when you're eating one food for a long time, you're losing the feeling of satisfaction. And this modern art came with it kind of like it kind of woke people up, and then all kinds of interesting stuff start to coming up, and you have to understand that early modernism was not abstract; it was quite realistic. From looking from like from our perspective, it's not as abstract as you think. So it came, this modernism came very quickly, but a little bit later. And I like this kind of diversity of art, and I always adore and appreciate all kinds of ways of expression. And you don't have to learn anatomy, and you don't have to create like realistic art in order to express yourself. I mean, like the most important thing is what you want to say. That's the most important thing. And if you need some skills and knowledge, classical art skills and knowledge, or any other skills to express this this kind of idea, then of course you have to learn. And of course, as more you know, as better tools you have, and as more free you become. It's same. It's coming, referring back to your sentence about like copying, like looking at like anatomy in the real world, and then you said, what if I want to change it in my head, and what if I want to modify it? I don't have model to to in front of me. Then this knowledge and your experience come into play, because then you start synthesizing the things. You already have these elements, you just have to mix them up and make new realities. And if you don't have those elements, you will not be able to make this symphony. And this classical knowledge is just one of the elements, which is quite handy, and I think it's very impressive. Because as you see, like this classical art, using it, there's a very limited amount of like things it's using for expression. It's a human face, human body, and animal, and that's it. That's it. Three things: human face, human body, and animal. And why it is so? Because these three things, or let's say two things, human and animal, gives us like the most of emotions. Most of emotions we have from the human and also from animal. And if you know those things and you know how they're built, you have very, very powerful tools to express yourself.
Yeah, I agree 100%. It's I've often used the analogy, if you want to be a poet, the better vocabulary you have, the easier it's going to be to say what you want to say or write what you want to write, right? And these are just artistic vocabularies that you're referring to.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally agree. It's a good analogy.
So, excuse me. So you mentioned animals, and I'm taking you literally. Is this something you're interested in as well as animal anatomy? Is this a direction you're going to go?
Well, one day, maybe.
Really?
Yeah, yeah. Because I'm interested in animals, but it's the same thing like with the humans. So I need to write a book on animals to understand like the animal anatomy.
So wait, so do we all need to write a book to understand the way you do, or can we just buy your book? I
Yeah,
know
you
the answer.
choose.
I know the answer to that. I mean, I honestly, to learn it the way you know it, the way the author knows it, you pretty much have to write a book. I think when a book is written to the level that your books are written, an artist like me can get what they need to make great paintings.
Well, you have limited time,
Yeah.
you know, when you and I'm just gonna save your time, and I
Mm-hmm.
do my research for you, and that's my service to you. That's my mission. So
Mm-hmm.
of course you can do, but then you will waste your time of studying this thing, and you know I will do it for you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You talked about how you're doing this arm and hand anatomy one, but you've already touched on arm and hand anatomy in your first book, Anatomy for Sculptors. So, what is it about arm and hand anatomy that warrants its own book?
Similarly to the head and neck, I just kind of like dive deeper into the subject. There's more reference materials, and I think like the most valuable thing what you're looking for in anatomy books is not the knowledge but good reference. That's what I
Mm,
do, and I believe you have the same. So because of course you want to learn things, but it's always not enough time for learning. And I think like the best what I can give you is like I kind of like dissect it for you and give you some good reference, some good pictures, some good angles. So that's pretty much and like form analysis, you know, form analysis. It will be more in depth. Like if you have my first book, of course there is uh, arms and hands, just the basics. I call it like a survivor's book. So basically, you have this book to survive. I mean, like when I was doing my sand sculpting, I had my kind of like this folder where I kept like the crucial pictures that it's needed in case if there's no internet and I need some good reference. So I had these pictures because when you go to the festival, just a little insight how the festivals are built. So if it's not the competition, if it's like a festival, you come to the place and the organizers they give you like some crappy pictures and say, hey, can you do this and that? And you have like 2 days on that. And then you go to the hotel and thinking, okay, how I'm going to do it, and then you make your own kind of sketching. And if you are abroad, and it was like early 2000s, it was a problem to get internet in hotels. I mean, there was no
mm-hmm.
internet except like the most cheap ones, like very cheap ones, because they were fighting for customers and they had a good internet. But in the expensive, fancy hotels, there was no internet. And then I had this kind of this folder of pictures that I always use, like the basic movements, basic shapes, and I could always survive with it. And I just, put in a plastic and not gonna become wet when it rains. And I was always asking what happens when it rains in sand sculpting. So, and then my book production started then because I had these folders and people said like, can you make it one for me? My colleagues said, and then I next time I came with two folders and I gave one to the colleagues, and then others saw and said like I also want one. Then I made two and came to the festival. Basically, my book creation career started with just finding some good pictures in internet or organizing them into the pages and laminating them and giving away.
Yeah. Yeah, man,
So
you're spot on be about your job as a anatomist and an author of anatomy books is to provide reference, because that is the frustrating thing about many anatomy books is it's got all this text and just enough reference for you to know where the origins and insertions are, where the muscle is located. But then they often leave you wondering, yeah, but what does the muscle look like contracted? What does it look like stretched? What does it look like in this position or that position? And
and from that angle or this angle,
right, right. And that's again, what's great about your perspective in writing these books is you provide all of that in the book, and it's incredibly helpful.
I made it for me. I mean, like, it's just like I made the book for me that it would be helpful in my art projects. So, and it turned out it's useful for others. So that's basically the secret.
Yeah.
You just make something that is good for you, and there's a big chance that you will serve others.
Yeah, but why hasn't anyone done it? I mean, there are
I
other
don't
good
know.
anatomy books out there. I mean, they're okay. I'm not saying that, like I said, the Goldfinger book is great, and there are some others that are good, but no one's done one like yours. And it seems so logical. If an artist just makes an anatomy book for themselves, then this should have been done 1,000 times over.
Yeah, I don't understand. I don't answer to this question. So there's so many good books out there since that. I mean, like the market has changed a lot. We have a lot of competition, but still, there's some things that people just don't get. I don't understand why. Why it's just a simple thing, just show it from a different angle or just color code it. Because I'm also running company that's making the education materials for the medical doctors. So it's called anatomy.app. So it's basically this web-based anatomy reference, but for the doctors. And people just love it, and they subscribe, and everything is fine. But as soon as we go to the universities to show it to the professors, they go like, yeah, but these muscles are color coded. Why don't you paint them red? Because they are in reality they are red. And I go like, okay, how can I explain you? Well, I don't know. Well, people just love it, but I don't know. And that's the problem. So because when you make a book if you're academic and you make a book for to become PhD or whatever, you're writing some science paper or whatever, there is like a particular language how you want to express, and there's like a rules how the very important paper should look like, and then that in community it's useless. And if you don't know how to read it, or if you have a different, kind of mindset, you're just not able to use it. And that's the reason why many of those classical art books, classical anatomy art books, are so intuitive, and they are not so visual, because the people who wrote those books, they have to be important people. They have to show to the academic field that they know how to write in proper way. I don't know.
So you think ego has kept this from happening?
I think that's like one of the reasons, ego, and people always thinking how they will look like in the eyes of others. They're always thinking about it, and they forget why they're making product. It's kind of, it's strange. It's hard to explain, but it's similar with the consumer product. Sometimes some company for years making very good consumer product, and other competitors don't even try to copy it, and they're making the same mistakes over and over again. I don't understand why, and who can explain it? Very simple things.
Yeah.
And we all know those companies that cannot put the widgets on a screen, or they cannot make like the connection. They make their own proprietary connection, or I don't know, like the copy paste made very complicated, or screen recording is you have to download application for screen recording. These little things, and one kind of discovered, and everybody use it, and it's already a standard of industry. But others they ignore it. I don't know.
Yeah.
And same thing with the books.
This episode is brought to you in part by Rosemary Brushes. If you're one of my listeners who's a professional artist, you're already using Rosemary Brushes. But for the rest of you, come on. Take your work a little more seriously. Stop buying the other brands. It's just not worth it. Every now and then you may get lucky and buy a good brush from another brand, but use the brand that professionals like myself are using. Go to rosemaryandco.com, link in the description or the show notes, and get yourself some quality brushes before your next painting. I think I would speculate, and who knows, right? Really, why it took so long for your books to come out, or books like yours. But one speculation I would have is that you really made a major sacrifice to do this. I mean, I don't know. You might be rolling in cash from selling these books. I don't know. But as far as your art career is going, you've had to basically stop sculpting and become an
Oh yeah,
author, right? And so,
yeah,
regardless of what kind of income you're making now, that's a sacrifice. And I think that that's a sacrifice that not a lot of artists are willing to make. The ones who
yeah,
might have been qualified to do what you did, you know?
yeah. Yes, I understand your point, and partly, yeah. Uh, you have to make this decision, so you'll not be able to make art during when you make a book. And if you love sculpture like I do, that's a lot to sacrifice.
It
That's a
is.
lot.
It is.
And I'm
Yeah.
kind of trying to compensate with making content, but still, well, it's just anatomy. It's not expressing my kind of inner thoughts. And I have this kind of vision that maybe when I'll be old, like really old, like
Hmm.
really
When you
old.
start to look old.
Yeah, when I start to look old, then I might come back to the stone sculpture and metal sculpture. And I do some of the sculptures. And this year I did this cast iron festival.
Hmm.
I took I had a vacation from my work, and then I did like for like 2 weeks straight art, and yeah, so
Yeah.
kind of moving to that direction.
Yeah, and I don't want you to take that the wrong way. I am one grateful that someone like you showed up and said, "I'm going to sacrifice sculpting for how many years have you been doing this? Like this book thing? Like 10 years or more? How long have you been doing it?
10 years, yeah,
10
exactly
years?
10 years.
I'm going to
Mm.
sacrifice my sculpture career for 10 years to make content for the rest of the artists out there. One, so there's that gratitude, but two, there's admiration because you just can flip on a dime and move from one successful career to another and make something extraordinary in a completely different medium. So I want to look at your books again and maybe just talk about some specifics of each of them. So you had said that when you do the form of the head and neck as an example, or arms and hands, you're doing it because you want to dive deeper.
Yes.
As far as the form, I can see for sculptors definitely why studying anatomy of the head would be really important. But maybe you could expound a little bit on what about anatomy of the head would be important for a painter. Because I'm a portrait painter.
Mm.
And frankly, I probably should be, but I almost never think about anatomy when I'm painting a portrait, except for possibly the skull. I think about the skull on some level, but not a lot, not muscle and fat so much. It's just purely observation. What are your thoughts on that?
If you look at the form, if you look at the book form of the head and neck, it's nothing about anatomy. There's no anatomy. Well, there is some anatomy, but there's very, very little in it.
You're
And
right.
the reason,
It's
yes,
structure.
and the reason why you don't have almost anatomy there is because, like you answer, you don't need so much anatomy. And so basically,
How about that?
that's that's actually what sometimes teachers are missing. They kind of focusing on especially in the head. There's like big difference because I teach also in academy. I'm teaching in art academy, which I graduated years ago. Now I'm a teacher there, and my course is divided in two parts. One
Mm-hmm.
part is head, and one part is the rest of the body. It's
Mm-hmm.
like a one semester only about the head, and one semester only about the rest of the body. And 90% of that head part is form, not anatomy. Well, if you look up in my anatomy of facial expression, then it makes more sense. But again, when we're thinking about the muscles, we're thinking about some volume. But if you look at the face, the muscles don't create the volume except like the masseter and temporalis. The rest of the muscles, they just don't create any volume. The volume is created by fat. The volume is created by bones, but not by muscles. And there is a mistake sometimes when you talk about like the muscles of the head, and then you're thinking about the skeletal muscles, but the muscles of the face, they just moving that fat around. And the thing what you want to understand is where they connected and how they wrinkle and how they fold that fat. That's the only thing you want to know. And that's more about physiology, not anatomy of the face. So anatomy is just the name, anatomy of the facial expression, but it's very little anatomy again. It's more about physiology, how these fat masses being moved around the head. And that's a very interesting subject, but it has very little to do with anatomy in the classical sense.
That's refreshing. I appreciate that. So fat is distributed different from person to person, though. Are there patterns that we can absolutely depend on?
Yes. Well, fat is not like some substance that is kind of randomly spread under your skin. The fat is locked in compartments.
Okay.
It's locked in spaces. It's divided by connective tissue, and every this department is very well defined, and it's described. And when you get older or when you move your facial masses, this fat moves in certain ways that is very much determined by these connective tissues that are connecting the skin and the fat to the bone. You know what I mean? So there is no random stuff in the face. So that's why plastic surgeons can make you beautiful, because they know how these spaces are organized under your skin. Well, like first of all, those are spaces, and the faces are filled with the fat, or they're filled with all kind of body liquids, but they are very much limited, and that's what you want to know. And there's different thicknesses of these structures, and usually, if there is like a septa, which is kind of connective tissue that separates two compartments of the fat, sometimes one is very thin and sometimes another one is thicker, and then you want to understand these relationship between these two parts.
I got to correct you on one thing, though. I mean, there may be exceptions to this, but I happen to know a plastic surgeon, and I was driving by his office one day, and I thought I'd stop by and say hi. And I walked in, and it was like it was walking into a waiting room full of zombies. I mean, I have never seen so many strange-looking people in one room in my entire life. So I think this particular surgeon, I hope he doesn't listen to my podcast, but this particular surgeon would probably do well to buy some of your books before he starts cutting more people up.
There is. I'm very famous actually among the plastic surgeons.
No
I would
kidding.
say like the biggest customer of like the second book is plastic surgeons. And
What?
I've been participating in these kind of plastic surgeon events in Latin America, and also last year I was in Monaco. I was giving like keynotes in like conferences and stuff. Yeah, it is
That's
amazing.
refreshing.
They always want to hear me because I kind of talking about like the form and the aesthetics, because they are some sort of like artists, but like the medical.
Well, they should
artists.
be.
And
They should be.
yeah, they should be. They should be. In the
Yeah.
best case scenario, they are, but not always.
Right.
And they always want me to talk about talk about not about like injectables and like all kinds of like Botox injections and facelifts and flaps and all kinds of things. They always want to talk about the form, because I'm obsessed about the form and aesthetics, and I analyzing the form, and they always want to hear like more about the same subject but from the different angle.
Man.
And the big pharma, and actually the big pharma, they always want me to have on the stage and talk about the form on these big events of the plastic surgeons. And I have plenty of friends of plastic surgeons, and they are different. Not only the patients are kind of a little bit different than the rest of the system, but also plastic surgeons are a little bit different. And you know what? They are artists, and that's why they're different.
Mm-hmm.
They are freaks in some sense. But again, I kind of understand them. I mean, like, that's very complicated and difficult art to sculpt faces of the people and boobs and stuff.
Well, yeah, if you put clay somewhere, you know it's going to be there in the morning. But when you're sculpting a face, you have no idea how it's going to heal. I mean, that would be that'd be a really difficult medium to be sculpting with.
Well, there is two different directions, very distinct. One is surgical, like really intervention when you went to interventional surgery kind of thing, and this is injectables, which is like non-invasive plastic surgery. It's called surgery, but has nothing to do with surgery. And then you see the result immediately. So basically, they inject like some sort of like a kind of like a silicone kind of liquids in the face.
Right.
And remember, I told you about these spaces, about these like compartments where the fat is stored. And when you get older, these septas, these connective tissue, they lose elasticity, and also the content of these spaces are changing. Usually, you lose like fat and you lose water. And then these injectables, if you inject in the right depth, right amount of the injectable, you kind of renew face, and they create like an amazing like effects. I mean, like, you've seen some very bad cases probably, but I've seen like amazing rejuvenation kind of examples.
Yeah.
It's just amazing. And of course, like, the best results you get from the like surgery, but you can get quite a bit nowadays. There's amazing like I mean, like the jaw line, for instance. You have this, jaw fat like falling here.
Yeah, I'm
like
totally getting
your
that.
cheek. Yeah. And what they do, just inject in front and in back of this this lump, and they create like the new line of the jaw, and it's amazing how they do it.
So
And
they
it
don't
really
take
works.
the fat away.
No.
So those jowls are often because fat's disappearing around them.
No, the jaws are usually because of the laxity of the skin, and I mean, like, it's just like the ptosis of the soft tissue.
So that skin
the,
just starts to sag. So they fill around
yes.
it with fat to even out the lines.
Yes, and the same thing with the nose. So you don't have to go like a rhinoplasty. You just like inject here and there, and then suddenly, And also the Botox is a miracle. It's just like the miracle thing, Botox is this toxin, bototoxin, which basically what it does, it paralyzes the nerves, not nerves. It paralyzes the fibers, the muscle fibers. So you are not able anymore to kind of wrinkle the skin, and to fold it. And you think, well, you've seen probably these bad examples when people kind of injecting in the face, and then face looks artificial and kind of plastic face. But there's a bad examples, but there's also good examples, because there's multiple like layers and multiple those fibers of the muscle. And if you inject in some of those fibers, not all, you can completely recreate the face. It's just, I've been in those places and I've seen those results, and that's amazing what they do.
Did you know when you started this business of writing anatomy books that you would learn so much about plastic surgery?
No.
That's incredible.
No, I was calling to my like the friends of mine which I knew, like plastic surgeons or like doctors, and they gave me like the numbers of the famous plastic surgeons here in Latvia and abroad. And usually it was like that. So I called them and I said, like, can you explain me a little bit this and that? Let's say eye area, blah blah blah. And they go like, yes, of course I will. And then they just don't call you back. I don't know why. They too busy, or when they start to explain you, they understand that there is no point explaining you because you don't know the basics.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like, there is no enough language for them to explain you this complex topic. So first thing you want to learn is the language, how they communicate, the medical language. And that took actually the most of the time, basically. And then as soon as I learned the language, how the medical language, then I don't need those doctors anymore. There's just so many good papers out there that you can find on the internet and read.
So you learned the medical language so that you could talk to doctors, and then
Yes,
you realize now that
can.
you know it, you don't need it. You don't even need to talk to doctors.
I don't need it.
That's
No,
ironic.
I don't need.
Yeah.
There is so many good content out there. I mean, like videos, like scientific papers. There is like a annual publication of like the plastic surgery Association of Plastic Surgeons. They publishing the American Association of Plastic Surgeons. They annually publishing these papers about like the new discoveries and stuff. Like you can read so much about that, and I'm so glad that I can.
So what are you doing from day to day besides reading these papers? And you said you've got a whole team. How does this all work? What do the individual members of your team do, and how is the business run?
As I said, I do teaching in academy a few times per week. Then I go to my office. The team is like the 2 3D artists I have. I have like a whole team of this IT engineers, programmers. Then I have copywriters, like marketing people, finance people. So yeah, so it's about like 20 people team.
Wow, you're kidding me. Did you ever imagine that when you just had your images on the beach?
I hate it. I hate it.
You really?
Yeah, I do.
You're not really, you're not one of those people that just loves business. It's just a necessary evil.
No, necessary evil, definitely. I'm like quite an introvert person. I love to rely on myself, and it's stressing and it's well, I don't like it. I like to rely on myself,
Yeah, well, that's an artist. We're not team players.
Yeah,
and that's why I asked.
Yes, and if you want to do big things, you have to work in teams. You have to thinking about the business things. You have to plan strategically finances, and you have to stress all the time about the cash flow and taxes and all kinds of like administrative problems and there's also human resources problems. You have to fire somebody. You have to hire somebody. I hate it.
Man. So how did you make the shift? I mean, you're an artist, you're not a team player, you're an introvert.
Yeah,
how did you hire the first person? How did you get the guts to just finally become a business person and make your first hire?
I don't know. It was scary. It was scary.
Yeah. And who was your first hire?
It took time. First hire, 3D artist.
A 3D artist.
Of course. Yeah. I had to finish the second book, and I needed a 3D artist to help me.
Yeah. Well, I just hired my first employee for the podcast, but it's my daughter, so it wasn't quite as scary. But even that, it's like, I get what you're saying. It's hard to be a team player and just put your creative endeavors into the hands of other people.
Yeah.
It's tricky.
I'm always the bottleneck in the company. Like if everything is delayed, it's always because of me, because, I don't know. This creative part, I cannot, I'm, as I said, like 10 years I'm doing this thing, and I didn't learn to delegate the things enough but still so many things depend on me, and that's not like the good business. If there's like one person that other persons are like dependent on. So I would love to have a business that I can go to vacation and it just running independently, and then I come back and nothing has changed. I would love, but it's not the case. I have to work on books and content and social media and this and that.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, if you ever figure out that secret, let me know, because
Yeah,
because I feel like some days I need to hire some people, and it's hard to make that leap as an artist. But hmm. Well,
there is no solution.
there isn't.
No, no.
Yeah, I mean, there are some artists that I feel like are pretty good at it. I've interviewed at least one, like Andrew Tischler. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the creative endeavor, but the guy's he's a savage business person. At least he seems to be. But I think that's rare among artists.
That's very rare. Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm not that. I'm not that type.
yeah. So, how is your book doing? It seems to be doing well because everyone I know knows about it. And I'm all the way here in
Hmm.
America, and you're in Eastern Europe, so that's got to be a good sign. But how is it doing?
Yeah, it's somewhat like 500,000 copies sold around the world.
500,000. That's good,
Copies.
right? Yeah, that's amazing,
Yeah,
right?
that's too amazing. It's including China, of course.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
they create something about half of the whole sales is China, because the book is translated in somewhat like 9 languages, and 7 of them are legal, and then like 2 illegal.
Hmm. It is amazing.
Illegal is Farsi, and what was the second? Russian was illegal language translation, and they're also
What do you mean
selling them in
illegal? Illegal to who makes the
because
law? Russia?
well, they just like no, they just translated themselves and selling somewhere in Russia, and they translated in selling somewhere in Afghanistan and Pakistan.
Oh, what you're saying is
Crazy.
they're translating it and selling it, not you. So
Yes.
they're breaking
Yeah.
the law.
No.
Okay, I
Yeah. Yeah.
thought you
Yeah.
were saying that you're not allowed to make a Russian translation.
No. 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 They made their own. They own that. They don't pay me anything. They just selling the book in the country.
Oh, geez, that's frustrating.
Yeah. Then there's 7 legal languages, something like Portuguese, French, German, English, Japanese, 2 Chinese languages, Korean, and some more languages, English.
Oh my gosh, that's got to be so frustrating to have your book stolen like that.
No, no, what I said, those are the legal copy, the
No,
legal
no, no, the other
languages.
ones though, the other languages.
Other ones, no, no, no. We contacted the guy in Pakistan and we said like, hey, you selling my book in Farsi, and where did you get translations? He's like, I made myself. And okay, and then you're selling book for money? He's like, yes. And then he said, shall I share with you with the profit? And I said like, no, just fuck it, just sell it.
Really?
Pakistan. Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I,
That's
I,
cool.
I, I, I don't have like, I mean, like it's a poor country and whatever makes you happy. So I cannot control. I cannot have my hand on your business. Like, just have a good luck. That's what I
Yeah.
said.
You know
Have
what
fun.
though? Your audience is so huge. I can't even imagine the potential for sales that you have.
Yeah, over time, yes. And what we selling also like publishing rights to other countries, because we kind of have hard time to understand like the other countries, like the culture, and then it's hard to sell in some, especially the Latin America. We're looking for some publishers. So if somebody hears me, then contact me. We're looking for some
Hmm.
publishers in Brazil and also Mexico. We're selling some amounts because we have translations, the Spanish and Portuguese translation we have, but there is a very strange laws that you cannot import the books because they have something like 100% tax on top of it, and Brazil is a very poor country, and they just cannot afford my books, and that's a shame. So I would love make it accessible for the Brazil. Therefore, we really need some publishers or some, agents there. So, and we can sell the rights or cooperate
Yeah.
or whatever.
This sounds really complex.
It is. Sometimes it is.
Yeah,
Sometimes
I
it's
can
not.
see why you don't like it. I mean,
Yeah.
it just, yeah, it sounds like a lot of grunt work trying to figure out, how to get your books in and out of countries. And that stuff doesn't, yeah, it certainly doesn't sound like the creative side of art making.
Yeah, it is. But then if you have a proper person and right person in right place, then it's not so bad. I mean,
Yeah.
then you can, and then it just works. But
Yeah.
then it takes time to find such person.
Yeah.
And I'm very lucky, actually, very lucky.
Yeah, it seems like you've done really well. So you said you've got a campaign for your next book. How do people contribute to that?
It will be published in social media. I think we're launching it November 1st,
Okay.
the campaign. And if you follow me on social media, Anatomy for Sculptors, you probably will get some links, and then would be nice to reach the goal in the first day or so.
Is there a place on your website that there will be a link as well? anatomyforsculptors.com.
I think, yeah, there is already something, but I think there'll be even more. Anatomy for Sculptors definitely will be some information. There's already Kickstarter warm-up, but we will be publishing also on social media as well. So just
Great.
follow us on social media, and then you will get updated. And yeah.
And where can people buy your books?
If you live in USA, probably the easiest way is Amazon. But also you can order from our store. It will be probably, if you are Prime Amazon user, probably Amazon will be cheaper for you. But if you order from our store, you will support us more.
You will. Okay.
Yeah.
That's good to know. All right. Well, ULDIS, it's been awesome talking to you. And again, thank you for doing it. Thank you for making the sacrifice and taking yourself away from your own art to help the rest of us out. It's I certainly appreciate it. And thanks for being on the podcast.
No, thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for tuning in to the Undraped Artist Podcast. If you enjoyed it, subscribe. And if you could, leave a comment or review. That really helps the channel. Please share the show with your friends, and if you're feeling generous, consider a monthly donation at theundrapedartist.com. Thanks again for watching. We'll see you next week.